Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Christine Dorsey, and she's going to tell us about her near-death experience. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for coming. So,
Yeah,
feel free to start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
sure. So my NDE experiences starts when I was in kindergarten, 5 years old. I had a terrible stomach ache, and which led to me coming home from school in serious pain, still a stomach ache all night. And my parents, we lived in Queens, New York, so it's a borough. Um, so in the city, so to speak. And my parents took me to a hospital called St. John's Hospital at the time. I distinctly remember going into this ER, which was packed, and a doctor looking at me, smiling, and telling me I had a stomach flu. He gave me green medicine. I remember this. We went home and I proceeded to vomit all over my mother's beautiful 70s multicolored, covering for the couch. I was still in complete agony and pain. And it was a Sunday morning, very early. I remember the sun coming through the window, and I just remember screaming, just screaming in pain. And it was at that moment that my appendix actually burst in the house, in the living room. Um, my parents quickly scooped me up and wrapped me in a Afghan and put me in the Volkswagen Bug at the time that they owned. And we went to a different hospital called Elmhurst General. When we arrived at the hospital, my father was very upset. He had had an appendicitis at the age of 7 and insisted that this was the issue. He stayed behind. And what I then remember is being on a gurney and looking up at the man who could have been, I don't know, anything. He could have been a nurse, he could have been a doctor, I'm not sure. But I remember him looking down and smiling at me. And I remember feeling very peaceful and calm and knowing everything was going to be okay. I very much remember that. At that point, I was wheeled into surgery right away because what had happened is when the appendix burst, I had then gone septic. So it's essentially poison running through my little body. Um, at this point, my next memory is then arriving in heaven in a totally different energy field than what we're in now, a different dimension. I do not recall the wormhole in or the wormhole back out. But my first memory was standing amongst the most brilliant field of tulips, my favorite flower. Um, at the time, I had never seen a tulip. My mom grew rose bushes, and I was 5, so I don't really know that many flowers. But I remember that they were tall because I was small, and there were so many colors, and it was so beautiful. It was like a vibration to the colors, really like they were singing. And that's just my best description. It's like take the most brilliant color you've seen and magnify it. That's the richness of what I was witnessing. And it just looked like fields and fields of tulips, like just kept going. And I was on a slight hill, so I was up the hill, and I looked down and there was this dirt path. I didn't have any shoes on. I wasn't cold. I wasn't scared. I was completely calm. And in front of me, what I saw was a man, the back of him actually. And the joke is, I kept saying like he had a really bad haircut. I thought his mommy didn't cut his hair the right way because he had kind of longish hair, but it kind of went like this. And he had sort of like a brown with some light blonde going through it that I could see from behind. And he had on a robe and I guess what we would call a hemp belt, and he had no shoes on. And wasn't afraid of him. And I understood that I was supposed to follow him. So I did. He never turned around at that point, and I didn't, it was fine. I wasn't curious at that point. I just understood. that I was going to follow him. And we began to walk down this path. And what I noticed is the sun was coming from the left. And to this day, it's my absolute favorite sunset, which is that time when, I'm in the Northeast. So I would say, spring and fall time where like it's starting to settle 4:35. So it's still kind of brilliant, but it's not burning. And that's sort of the sun that I saw. And I continued to walk down the path and follow him. And we arrived at really the most magnificent tree. It looked like the perfect tree you'd want to climb if you were a kid. I had a tree in front of my house, a nice big tree, but it didn't look anything like this tree. It was just absolutely, absolutely perfect. And I just thought, wow, I just was in awe and smiling when I looked at it. I knew that. And he then turned around and looked at me. And I remember looking at his face, and I remember looking at his hair, and I remember that he had facial hair, a bit of a beard, not too long, with the mustache, eyes. His eyes were green. I remember that. And just smiling, and I could feel the warmth and the joy and the kindness. There were no words spoken technically, but it was almost like I could hear what he said. So it was almost like a psychic, I guess, in terms of like understanding what he was saying to me and what he was implying to me. And he picked up this beautiful book. It was a very thick book. And at that point, at 5 years old, I was in kindergarten, and I don't know about you, but at 5, they were the small hard books, they were like cardboard practically. But this was very different to me, and it was very thick. It had uneven pages, and I noticed that the cover was like a cloth. It was very soft. It just looked different. And he sort of flipped some of the pages in my face and said, "You too will know this book one day." And I just smiled and giggled. I didn't really understand in that moment what he was saying, but I remember that he said that. We then took a walk to this little area where there was a stream, and like old rocks that have been worn by the water, it was like that. It was sort of lined with very old rocks on each side. And it wasn't a very big stream. It was just this beautiful stream. And he just held my hand, and we looked at the stream. And then I woke up. The next thing I remember was being in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 17 days, 12 in ICU. It was a very serious health condition that I was in because the appendix had burst. After that, I had come home. And at this point, it was my kindergarten graduation. And what I was feeling was depressed because I couldn't understand or comprehend why, but I didn't want to be here. I was happy where I was. And so coming home in this world felt very uncomfortable for me. And I didn't understand also how to express it. But it is shown through a photo, which I did send to you, which was my graduation picture. We, we went to have the photo done, and the photographer was trying to get me to smile. And she just was, kept saying, why wouldn't a little 5-year-old have anything to smile about? And the smile you get in that picture is probably about the best I gave her, because that's how I felt. Like, you can really see it in that photo. So in those months and years after, I tried to express what was happening, but, back then, it was the 70s, and there was no transparency in what happened in the hospital. No one really understood if I did crash or didn't. No one was talking about that. They didn't really know what to do with my emotions, so nobody really gave it any attention. And we just sort of all brushed it under the rug. and eventually life moved on, which is very typical for a lot of people, I think, when you go through somewhat of a trauma like this or similar to this. But I compartmentalized it and I understood that there was something very special about this. And when it was time, I would understand more. And here we are, life goes on. Then growing up, I always had a very, very good intuition. So I learned early on to pay attention to that. Listen to your intuition. It's never wrong, I say. It's always important. It's always going to help you and save you and steer you in the right direction. In my 20s, I ended up having my first energy healing session. And we noticed something interesting, which was when the practitioner, who was my sister-in-law at the time, was working on me, I was seeing visions that she was seeing at the same time. And I remember going, whoa, it was sort of like something's happening here that we need to pay attention to, So over the years, I was always drawn to wellness and helping people. And eventually, what ended up happening was I opened up a practice that dealt in wellness. I was a certified health coach, wellness consultant. Initially, it started with clients with weight loss, and we transitioned into whole life sort of wellness that transitioned into stepping into energy healing and healing. What I found was, starting back with the weight loss clients, was that there was a healing going on in our short 15-minute appointments. I had many clients and we only had these quick appointments, but I noticed that when I wasn't there and I had an associate fill in for me, because at the time my kids were in a lot of sports and I might have a game to go to, that the clients would get upset and they would tell me, they would say, I really don't like seeing X, Y, and Z. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with the appointment. But what they then started saying was, I always feel better when I'm with you. I always feel there's always something that happens, or, something you say to me, or there's some kind of exchange of energy that was happening with many of the clients. And I just kind of brushed it off as, well, I guess, I'm just good at this job. I didn't, I wasn't really diving into it. And as time went on, as I believe happens and happened for me at least, I think, to me, Spirit had ministered these gifts, and Spirit knew when it was time to wake me up, so to speak. And so for me, I can only speak is that the way my life path went, I was intersecting with wonderful individuals, wonderful teachers, wonderful mentors at the perfect timing. I would call divine timing. And in one of my intersections, I would say, I ended up seeing a really wonderful medium from Connecticut. And I was always curious about, who is this man that I saw when I had my NDE? I knew it wasn't Jesus, but I just didn't know who he was. So we had this reading and I barely gave her any information. I'm just more like, hey, I had an experience, when I was young. And she was so amazing. She just explained it. She's like, oh, it was Joseph. It was Jesus's cousin. I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. It just resonated. On every single level, it resonated. This makes perfect sense to me. Okay. So I digested that. I absorbed it. Again, perfect timing. Now you're going to know. After that, what happened was, it was around the holidays, and I took a trip into New York City, which a lot of people do. And at the time, when you're on Fifth Avenue, that's where St. Patrick's Cathedral is. A lot of people will go in and they might light a candle or just kind of go and just experience it and then walk out. And at that time, it was almost impossible to get past the entranceway, crowded like nobody's business, especially at Christmas. I happened to go really less than 2 weeks before Christmas and was shocked at the fact that we were able to go in there and it was relatively quiet. And I thought, this is very interesting. I was like, well, what am I walking into here? We decided, well, let's just walk the Stations of the Cross. I don't normally do that, but something told me I needed to walk all the way around this church. So I did. Again, my intuition said, let's do this. It was beautiful. It was spectacular. I got to behind the altar, which was a shrine to Mary, which was absolutely stunning. And just past the shrine was one more station or statue with not one person there. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, it's unbelievable that it was this empty right before Christmas. So I knew I just had this calling that I needed to walk over there. And that was the station that explained how Archangel Gabriel came to Mary's cousin Elizabeth and told her that she was going to be blessed with a son who was going to baptize the Son of God. And every hair in my body stood up. And it was, again, just another confirmation of like, yep, that was my son you saw. That was him. And again, now here we are afterwards, intersecting with more wonderful teachers and wonderful healers when the timing was right, transitioning my business into the importance of looking at your whole life, not just the food on your plate, but really like the joy in your life, the spirituality in your life, your friendship circle, these aspects of sort of a pie chart. I would say definitely, although it may sound very religious, it is more spiritual than anything else. I'm a big believer that we are all spiritual beings. If you have a religion you belong to, bless you. That's for you. For me, it's different. It's spiritual. And I look at these individuals as sort of wonderful ascended masters who are here to help us and guide us. And that was very much for me, my experience with John. As I began to step further into my wellness practice, I knew it was time to really explore the healing. I had recalled what had happened to me in my 20s, and I remembered what happened with that energy healing. And I said, there's something here. And again, it's sort of that knock, knock spirit gives you to wake up. And I dove into becoming a Usui Reiki master, integrated energy therapist at the advanced level. I became a certified meditation teacher, certified tarot reader, an ordained minister, and really stepped into those gifts fully and said, you know what? If you're here, you're here. You're going to follow your purpose. All of those gifts that were ministered at 5, you're ready. And so I started to see clients virtually and in person. And what I found, one of the gifts that I had was that as I was working on a client, I would call in spirit and ask for guidance as I'm working on the client, and they would show me stories and traumas that are being held on the physical level in the person's body. It could be, for instance, I had a client one day who I noticed in her throat area, she had a lot of issues going on, and I just felt the emotion of like she really didn't speak up in her life, that she was very timid, although she had thoughts and opinions, she never let them out. She was in her 60s. We ended up talking about it further, and she ended up having thyroid issues that had come out throughout her life. And Spirit was showing me this because, we are part of the healing process. So it's what I say. It's like this triad of like, there's spirit, there's the client, and there's myself. And it's not just, the healer is going to wave the magic wand. It's also the client is partly responsible for the thought process and systems and beliefs that they bring in and how much healing they're willing to do. So they show me the stories behind the issues. And yes, we move energy, and yes, we provide healing. We pull the layer, I call it the energetic layers off one at a time. As life happens, traumas happen, stress. And what the type of healing that I do can assist with is basically being able to remove those layers to get you to the space where you can also be a major participant in the healing. And I believe if I think about it, that's exactly what John was. John was a supporting, important cast member to Jesus. He was behind the scenes, but so important. And it makes perfect sense to me that this would be the individual who I would see in my experience, because for me, I feel like I'm a supporting cast member to my clients. I'm behind the scenes helping them, but them to do well. That's for them to shine. That's for them to heal. And as a person heals, we're not only better for ourselves, we're better for everyone, our friends, our family, collectively. And that's really been so important. And I love it. It's my life purpose. And I'm grateful that I was able to have this blessing. I will say, looking back, it was a horrific experience, but also, it didn't happen to me. It really happened for me because of the blessings that it really brought into the world. So I'm really grateful.
So, so I'm not misunderstanding. So you originally believed it was Jesus, but later you believe it was John the Baptist?
No, I knew it wasn't Jesus.
Oh,
I just didn't know who it was. I
oh,
knew he wasn't
gotcha.
Jesus. I just knew I didn't know
Okay.
who he was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but so grateful. It is so interesting because, um, he doesn't look anything like what people would depict, or other organizations would depict what he looks like. And, it's that young artist who painted the image of Jesus when she was like 8 years old, 7 or 8. And now she has a gallery down in Texas. I'm blanking out on her name. And she had, her parents weren't religious, and she painted this picture of Christ. And it's like, yeah, that's about the kind of what they all looked like then. Like, it's not this, rigid sort of portrait with the gold crown and chalice. It wasn't that at all. And most importantly about it was the beautiful energy that, I experienced when I was in that realm. And the fact that at 5 years old, I probably should have been terrified, and I absolutely was not terrified at all. I absolutely loved it. I ended up actually looking up the spiritual meaning of tulips, and I found one of the meanings was it was like pure and perfect love. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, of course, right? Of course, pure and perfect love. That's exactly what it was. So, now from here on out, it's just been a special flower for me, obviously. So,
Isn't it strange how we have these, and maybe more so as when we have them as children, I don't know, but we come back with these gifts that I'd like to say lay dormant, but they really don't, even though we don't know we have them or
mhm.
understand them or why we have them or what to call them or what to do with them. They're there anyway.
Yeah,
I'm sure you probably noticed as you were growing up things about you that was different. It's like, your intuition, for example. Like,
yes.
you don't know what to make of that as a young age.
Intuition, picking up on other people's energy, and not really wanting to go to parties, not really wanting to be in big crowds. To this day, I'm pretty much well known for the Irish exit. I'll pop in, either enjoy myself, and all of a sudden I'm gone. It's just, and throughout, I think growing up, I also was able to, and I think that this was part of the gifts, is just, when I'm with a person, it's sort of like there are three things that are happening at the same time. I'm listening to them, I'm feeling their energy, and there's also like the part of me that's figuring out why this is happening. And I try to explain that. It's like, I don't know. I feel like people who are super intuitive have the worst ADD because there's always so much
Right.
going on, at least for me. But, having said that, I just, led a life for me personally that was a little more aligned, where I felt a little more comfortable until I understood all of those tools that I needed to incorporate. In addition, also, I should add, as one of the gifts that was ministered is, and having had crossed over, is that I am able to bring loved ones through during a healing session in a mediumship form. At this point, I'm not doing mediumship readings because I have to create a little more grounding around that, I think, if I were going to do one-on-one. But when I'm doing a healing session, if it's in the client's highest good and they have a message regarding something that's to elevate their healing, then we do that. And I did actually, I will tell you, I just had a client the other day. It was her first time, and her grandmother came through. And I think I would guesstimate that her grandmother came through with the message to validate the work that was being done on her, because it was almost like, somebody, and I always, the way I say it is, if I get it, if I receive the images, the messages, they're for you, not for me. I don't judge it. I just pass it on. But as I'm telling her what I'm picking up throughout her body, it was like that one nugget that where you could see her crack, where you could see her really, her eyes watered, because there's no way I would have known anything that she said aside from everything else that I saw regarding her body. But it was also knowing that your loved one is there with you during your healing and that they want you to heal, because whatever was coming up, this is the beginnings of something that could turn into something else. So energetically, and maybe in an emotional level, maybe pay attention, because we want to provide some healing here. And I think collectively, that's where we are right now. It's all about this healing. And I do believe, like you were saying, we have these gifts. We're not sure when or why they're going to come out, but it's so divine timing. Like, could you, the synchronicities, how complicated it is, we could never figure that out as human beings, but spirit can. And so I really, yeah, it's amazing.
It seems like those of us that have issues in crowds, like that's a deficit, but yet individual is where we soar. That's where we succeed and exceed. Is we
Yeah,
have to have, if we're going to put in that energy, let it be one person at a
yeah.
time
Mm-hmm.
instead of, that's why I like doing podcasts, because I can just focus on that one person, nothing
Yeah,
else. And
yeah.
all distractions is quiet, everything's out, because I'm the same way. You get me in a crowd and I'm picking up everybody's energy and their mood and their intentions, and
Oh, yeah,
get me out of there. And it takes a while to shake it
absolutely.
off.
Yeah, and there, and that too is like it's like wellness practices for people who are intuitive and empathic. It's figuring out what you can do. I've had to figure out personally for me what I need to do in terms of protection and grounding and just being really clear on boundaries with energy and individuals. And I will not budge from that. I honestly have had, yeah, a couple of people who've tried to impose their energy on me, but I will never take it on. It's not my karma, in this life. And so, the thing is, why would we want to get in the way of anybody else's karma? I'm not taking on their karma. This is yours for this life. Good luck. If, I will help you, but I will not take it on for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn to, because I used to do therapeutic foster care and social work and everything, I
Ooh,
don't have to fix everybody I meet.
no,
I don't have to
no.
delve that deep and then just start fixing everything, because it was just something I had to do all the time. It was like I did, 10 kids at once, 14 kids at once, I could
Oh,
do kids all at
yeah.
once like that without the individual, because I know
Mm,
them already. You get to know.
sure.
Then once you know them, then you know where you're at with them. But then you get to people you don't know and you're trying to feel it
Mm.
out. But it'd be nice if in the schools had something to identify spiritually talented kids.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in astrology and numerology. I think it, again, being so scientific and complicated, if we actually knew or took the time to pull our children's charts and understand, hey, you know, Jenny has, two major planets in Gemini. Oh, she doesn't have ADD. She's just always in her head thinking, thinking, thinking. So maybe we need to tailor her studies this way. Maybe she needs more of an outdoor based type of school and to ground more. Oh my gosh. I mean, then we'd really get to know who our children are. And I do believe I totally agree with you, because they're all spiritual individuals, and especially the children who are coming in and have been coming in, they're very empathic and they're very sensitive and they're picking up on everything. I have a big, big clientele in the 20s age, And, you know, they're managing so much along with all of us, but I'm always teaching them about grounding and protection, being mindful, because that's going to be the thing that saves them, you know, that for sure. And I totally agree with you. I think that would be so wonderful if we could do that for our kids. It's like really learning about your child, like really putting that effort in.
Yeah, and letting them exceed at something that has always been shunned.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
spiritual
mhm.
side has always been shunned. Don't talk about that. You know, they're going to put you on medication. They're going to think you're crazy.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Yep.
And for those kids, you know, they could have an outlet and then join other kids that
Hmm.
have the same kind of spiritual IQ or whatever you want to call it, gifts.
Yeah.
And like you say, and focus their education around that because they're going to learn differently.
Yeah. All right, Peggy, let's start a center. We should do it.
Yeah, we should. I'm ready. I'm all
Oh
about
gosh.
changing the world.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh gosh.
I did hear a while back that some college students are going into schools and talking to kids about near-death experiences.
Hmm.
And it's showing, and they're following the kids for a while, like for a few years, the kids that have been exposed to this, and they notice a huge improvement in their behavior.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah, that is so cool. That's amazing. I love that. I love that. That's incredible. I think
Yeah.
is yeah,
And what better
there's
way to get a child to not focus on what shoes they're wearing, what clothes they're wearing, how's their hair, what's their grades, what sports, what am I good at? I don't compare because this is a different kind of realm when we
yes.
start talking spirituality. It's about who you are inside
Hmm.
and allowing other
Yeah.
people to see who you are inside and being proud of who you are inside and
Hmm.
not focusing on so much of the outside stuff and seeing that how you treat others does matter in a bigger scheme of things. All
Yes.
these lessons that come with
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful. That's so, I was just thinking to myself, wow, talk about complete awareness, because I think when we cross over, that's what, you know, that's what we're blessed with is complete awareness. And if you're a child and you're unsure about faith or what faith is or what happens after you die or any of that, it really graces you with complete awareness when you can identify with a young person who's sharing their experience. That's so beautiful. I love that story. That's great. Thank you.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add that we didn't get to cover, or how people can get in
Um,
contact with you? I think you sent
sure.
me a website link. I can put that in
Yeah.
description.
So, the name of my business is Heliotrope Holistic Healing. It's heliotropeholistic.healing.com. Um, you know, and heliotrope means it's a Greek word for following the sun. Sunflowers are heliotrope, so they follow the sun. And I think what I would say is if you can take anything out of this interview, it's that my experience wasn't just for me, it's for everybody that I help. I think that's really the purpose here. And it's for understanding that if you're willing to step into healing, you're raising your vibration. And healing isn't easy, it's hard. We can definitely attest to that. Over time, it gets so much easier. And it is the best thing you will do for yourself and for everybody who you love in your life and collectively. Because when you raise your vibration, you increase the vibration around you. So I am so grateful that John gave me this experience, you know, and Spirit gave me this experience so that I could bring this forward and help people who need help and who are ready for it, you know? Yeah,
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's good for anybody to get in contact with that inner person we all have. And I think that's what
absolutely.
a lot of this does from our near-death experiences is we were on the other side out of our body.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we just kind of keep that holy space open. I don't know how else to say
Yeah.
it. And then, like
Yeah,
you said,
that's a
if
good
we
way to
can
say it.
help others find
Yep,
their holy space.
that's it. Yep. It happens for a reason, right? It doesn't not happen for a reason. The gift and the grace of being allowed to come back is there's going to be something you're bringing back to serve humanity. That's my belief. And it's up to you, the free will, if you're going to do that. And so in my case, I've absolutely stepped into it fully. And I'm grateful to be able to do it and humbled to be able to do it. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. And so I wish you
Yeah,
all the best.
thank you.
Okay. I'll send this out to you later today.
Okay, thanks so much, Peggy.
Uh,
Take care. Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.
Okay.